In today's class, we are going to study what is de Broglie matter wave and Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Okay, fine. So first we'll take up de Broglie's matter wave concept. Okay, right. De Broglie's matter wave. Okay, so what is de Broglie's matter wave? Let's see. See, we know light exhibits dual nature. Light doesn't have mass. Despite of not having mass, light can exhibit dual nature. That is particle nature. Though it doesn't have mass, it behaves like a particle. And another one is the wave nature. Like the de Broglie told, any material particle moving with certain velocity also will have duality. Okay, what is the duality? Basically, a material particle behaves like particle. Apart from that, it would also associate with some wave-like behavior, some wave characteristics. The wave associated with any material particle is called matter wave. For that matter, he says any particle of any mass will have its own wave associated. The wave associated with material particle is what is matter wave. This is matter wave duality. Okay, so material particle behaves basically like a material, but wave characteristic is also there for material particle. Like the way light without having no mass can behave like a particle, and wave, a particle of some mass, can behave also like a particle and a wave. That's the meaning of the matter wave concept. Okay, so according to him, if there is a particle, okay, so of mass m, it has some mass. When it is moving with a velocity v, then it will have some waves associated with it, wave characteristics associated with it. So a particle would move like a wave. It would also have wave characteristics. So the wave associated with the material particle have wavelength. Correct? What is this distance between any two adjacent crests or troughs is called wavelength lambda. De Broglie could able to derive the expression for wavelength of matter wave. Okay, by combining two concepts, that is Max Planck quantum theory and Einstein mass energy relation. So both have been combined to give the expression for wavelength of matter wave. Okay. So according to Max Planck, energy present in each quantum or light photon is E is equal to h nu. Okay. Similarly, according to Einstein, energy is related to mass as E is equal to mc square. Call it as equation 1, equation 2. We can equate now both energy forms now, equating equation 1 and 2. H nu is equal to mc square. But we know c is velocity of light. It is given by nu lambda, product of frequency and wavelength. Correct? So this frequency we can resubstitute now. Frequency nu is equal to c by lambda. Let's substitute. Therefore, h into nu in the place of nu, c by lambda is equal to mc squared. Okay. So then we need an expression for lambda, right? So you retain 1 by lambda is equal to mc squared divided by hc. 1c get cancels. Therefore, 1 by lambda is mc divided by h, or take reciprocal, you get an expression for lambda. Lambda is equal to h Planck's constant divided by m into c. But the thing is, c is velocity of light. Excuse me. Any material particle having some mass cannot move with velocity of light. Hence, for a particle of mass m moving with a velocity v, the expression in the place of c, I can write v now. So lambda is equal to h divided by m into v. This becomes expression for wavelength of matter wave. M into v product is called momentum of the particle. Here we give momentum the symbol p. So you would also see this kind of equation where p is equal to m into v momentum. So that's the thing. And what does it mean? A material particle of mass m moving with a velocity v would always be associated with a wave of wavelength lambda, that is wavelength of matter wave. All the terminology we know. Anyhow, we shall write once again. So m is mass of the particle, okay, v velocity, and h Planck's constant. And its value 6.626 approximately, or 625 you can say, into 10 raised to minus 34 joules. Okay. So now once again we shall see, he combines Max Planck concept, E is equal to U, and Einstein's E is equal to mc squared. When you equate them, h nu becomes equal to mc squared, and there nu is nothing but c by lambda. So substitute, then you can get an expression for lambda as h divided by m into c. Finally, c is velocity of light, but for a material particle of mass m, which will have velocity less than light, so velocity is represented by the symbol v. So lambda is equal to h divided by m into v, or lambda is equal to h divided by v. So this is the expression for wavelength of matter. Okay. So would you like to write down, or shall I proceed?
1 minute, sir.
We'll write.
Okay. I'll just zoom out so that you can see maximum portion of it. If it is complete, I'll proceed.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
1 minute, sir.
Okay.
Sir, what is M, sir? Mass of?
Particle. This is particle.
Done, sir.
Oh, fine. This is de Broglie's matter wave. See, the de Broglie matter wave concludes that any moving particle having some mass will always be associated with a matter wave of wavelength lambda. Then we may think that any particle which we can see or any object that we can see which is moving should have wave-like characteristics. So does it mean a bus which is moving moves like a wave? An aeroplane which lands will move like a wave and land in somewhere in the yard nearby? Or does it mean a bullet fired by a police person on a thief will go in a wave-like manner and hit somebody else? It doesn't happen. So in any of the macroscopic particles, what is a macroscopic particle? A particle which can be seen by naked eye. A microscopic particle which can't be seen by a naked eye. So any macroscopic particle doesn't exhibit wave-like behavior. It doesn't have wave-like behavior. Then how come? So then is it de Broglie's matter wave is not applicable for macroscopic particles? Okay, so it is always like this. In case of lambda is equal to h divided by m into v equation, h is constant, and if a particle is moving with a constant velocity, v would be constant. Remove that constant. This implies that proportional to mass of the particle. Correct? Mass of the particle. Now, what does it mean? As mass of the particle increases, wavelength of the matter wave associated with the particle decreases. Okay? So, any macroscopic particle possesses considerable mass. Considerable mass. If mass becomes considerable, therefore insignificant lambda. Okay, possesses considerable mass. When mass becomes very much considerable, lambda becomes very much insignificant, and insignificant matter wave. Therefore, any macroscopic particle doesn't behave like a wave or doesn't execute any wave-like characteristic. Therefore, macroscopic particles doesn't exhibit wave characteristics. Then in which case there will be wave characteristics significantly seen
Microscopic
exactly.
particle.
In any microscopic particle. That too when it comes to subatomic particles like proton, neutron, electron. Okay. Here mass is insignificant. They have mass of the order of 10 raised to minus 27 kg. Electron, that too it is very negligible, 10 raised to minus 31 kg. So in any microscopic particle, which possesses, negligible mass. Negligible mass. The wavelength of matter wave becomes considerable or significant, becomes significant. So what does it mean? All microscopic particles, when they move like a wave. They exhibit wave characteristics. Okay, therefore they exhibit wave characteristics. Okay, that's the meaning of that. So all microscopic particles move like a wave. What does it mean again? So when you take it inside the atom, this concept, and apply it. So this is the nucleus. Okay, this is the energy level. Like that, many energy levels. So electron is there in different energy levels. Now, as per Bohr, Neil Bohr, electron is revolving around the nucleus in well-defined paths having energy called energy levels. Electron simply revolves around the nucleus. But electron is a subatomic particle now, and it's been proven. De Broglie has proven this matter wave experimentally. So electron, being a particle with negligible mass, must have to have considerable wavelength for matter wave. So that means it should execute wave-like behavior and move like a wave. Okay, so electron should move something. It should move like this. Correct. So electron should move like a wave around the nucleus. The moment when I say electron moves like a wave, it becomes three-dimensional motion. And electron, being a wave, cannot fix itself to two-dimensional path concept given by Bohr, that is energy level or orbit. Okay, so if I represent here, this purple line is energy level. It is two-dimensional path of electron. It is Bohr concept. Okay, then what is this wave? It is three-dimensional, wave motion of electron. It is de Broglie's concept. Now de Broglie's concept has been proven experimentally, which simply means that the concept of two-dimensional path for electron, where he said that electron is simply revolving around the nucleus in a defined energy level or orbit. So that concept has been abandoned. So de Broglie's matter wave, becomes a serious blow for the concept of Bohr. Is it okay? And one more serious blow for this Bohr's theory is through Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Okay, so we'll see now. Okay, what is Heisenberg uncertainty principle?
Sir, can you scroll up, sir?
Yeah. Okay. Little more.
No, sir, enough, sir.
Was it Shashank asking for this?
Yes, sir.
Oh,
Sir, done, sir.
That's nice. Okay. I'll proceed on to the next concept. Okay, that is Heisenberg uncertainty principle. What is uncertainty? The one which is not certain. Uncertain. What is uncertainty principle? Now let's say you are going on a motorcycle. Okay. I may not write a big good one. Okay, just something like that. Okay, something. So you are riding the motorcycle. Something a different one. Now, let's say you are moving at a velocity of say 100 is danger. I don't recommend. So go for 50 kilometer per hour. Okay. Okay. So you are riding the motorcycle at a velocity of 50 kilometer per hour. So now, after 30 minutes, where exactly you will be? You will be at a distance of 25 kilometer covered right now. That means you can exactly predict your position. Okay, if I am going by 50 kilometer per hour speed, after half an hour I'll be at 25 kilometer. After 1 hour at 50 kilometer. After 2 hours at 100 kilometers covered right now. And you can calculate your velocity, and if you know your mass and motorcycle mass, velocity into mass will become momentum also. So if you can determine velocity, momentum also can be determined. Apart from that, position, your position exactly at different intervals of time can be determined. What Mr. Heisenberg was telling, you consider the atom, electron is revolving in different energy levels. Okay, so now he wanted to find out the position of electron, the position of electron, exactly, and also the velocity and mass, that is momentum. How, he tried many times. How much ever he tried, he could not get accurate position of electron and even the momentum also. Okay, so couldn't determine exact position and momentum of electron in an atom. Okay, so more accurate, if he focuses on determining position, it used to become little more accurate, but momentum determination used to go beyond normal range. That means it used to become complete uncertain. But anyhow, you try to determine position and momentum of electron, it becomes errorful, uncertain. What does it mean physically? Let's say electron is moving with some velocity. You would think that after a while it will go and be there at that position. But when you expect electron to be there here, electron wouldn't be there. That's the meaning. You think electron would be there here? No, it is not there. You think electron is there here? It is not there. So you think of a position for electron as per your calculation. Electron used to be not there. That's all. It may be somewhere nearby. That's how it. Now he said, Heisenberg said, there is lot of error associated in the measurement of position and momentum, velocity associated with the electron. Okay, so there is error. That's why he gave this statement like this. Okay, it is impossible to determine both position and momentum of a subatomic particle simultaneously and accurately. It is impossible to determine both position and momentum of a subatomic particle simultaneously and accurately. There will be error associated with the measurement. Then he gives a mathematical statement for this uncertainty. Let delta x indicate error or uncertainty in the measurement of position of the particle, and delta p error in the measurement of momentum of the particle. Then their product delta x into delta p would always be either greater than or equal to a constant h by 4 pi. Okay, so the uncertainty, what does delta x indicate? It indicates uncertainty in the measurement of position, and delta p uncertainty or error in the measurement of momentum. That product of their uncertainties is either equal or greater than h by 4 pi, a constant. So what does it mean? Let us understand this mathematically. We'll take a product of two variables, okay, just as an analogy for you to understand this. So I'll say x into y is equal to 20. Okay. Now x and y are variable, they can take different values. Now let's say x is 2. Okay, what should be y?
10.
It
10.
is.
10.
Next,
10.
x increases, let's say. It becomes 5. What should be y?
4.
4.
4.
That means what? When x is increasing from 2 to 5, y is decreasing from 10 to 4, such that the product is again a constant, that is 20. So, or it becomes 10, it becomes 2. Something. So, whenever the product of two variables is equal to a constant, it simply means that when one variable increases, another should proportionately decrease, so that the product has to be constant. Or can x be 0 by any chance here?
No, sir.
No.
No.
X or y can't be 0 at all. That means the value of x and y cannot go down to 0, because mathematically it is defined as x into y is equal to 20. As per the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, it is either equal or greater than 20. So it can be greater but not lesser. If I say x into y is lesser than or equal to 20, then I can say lesser than means it can go even to 0. But it is not the definition given. So what does it mean here? As delta x increases, delta p decreases, and vice versa. That's the meaning. Okay. So that means there is no chance that either delta x or delta p goes to 0. That's the meaning. So we can conclude that there is always error in the measurement of position and momentum of any subatomic particle or any particle of the size of subatomic particle. That's the meaning of that. Okay. So combining Heisenberg uncertainty principle and de Broglie matter wave together, we can conclude this much. Electron is revolving around the nucleus. Okay. Electron is revolving around the nucleus. Now, as per Bohr, electron is simply going across the nucleus in two-dimensional path, that is energy level or orbit or shell, whatever. Okay. So electron, but de Broglie says electron moves like a wave. a wave can never confine itself to a two-dimensional path. At the same time, Heisenberg uncertainty principle says that if I predict a position for electron based on its velocity and all, we can't find that. Okay, you think of a position, electron is just not there. But thinking so, can I say that electron is not there in the atom at all? No, we can't say electron is there for sure. But wherever we think it is not there. So how does exactly it goes well? What we can conclude based on this? So one analogy can be taken. So let's say a student goes to college. In the college, he has to be there in the classroom, morning to evening. In the break, he can have some food or so like that. But he is a little proven to be mischievous. This guy, say Mr. Suresh, goes to college. But he is there in the college from morning 8 o'clock to somewhere like up to 3 o'clock or 4 o'clock. He's there in the college. But you wanted to go and give something to him or talk to him. You will go to the classroom, but the people say that just now he went. He's not there in the classroom. Now then you think that he must be there in the library. You will go and ask for Mr. Suresh in the library. So librarian says, so just half an hour before he came and went out. Then you will go to playground. They say that just 1 minute before he went. You will go to washroom, just 10 seconds he left. You are just searching him in the entire campus. He is not there wherever you go and find him, but he is there inside the campus. Now, Suresh, the entire college campus itself is his place. He is there inside, but where exactly? That is the biggest question. Same thing, inside an atom, electron is there, but where exactly, it is not predicted. It becomes uncertain, errorful. Sometimes it may be deviated by half an hour, or sometime finding him may be deviated by 10 seconds or something like that. So error may be sometimes in terms of determination of position, error may be sometimes more or sometimes less, but it is always errorful. So based on this, what we can say, it is a wave, it can't confine to one particular path, and it can't be found out in any position, but we can only think of some space where electron is found around the nucleus. So what we can think now, electron, is it there around the nucleus at this point? Maybe there, but not now when I found out. It may be there here, it may be there here. So we'll find out all probable positions where electron is possible to be found there. Okay. So the position, probability of position of electron around the nucleus, I'll start finding out. These are all the dots which represent the position of electron around the nucleus. In all these places, electron can be there with maximum probability. Okay. Now, can electron be there after this? There may be a slight chance. Here, no, here it is not there. It is not there. Okay. Here, it may be slight chance. But here, in this area, okay, so electron is found with maximum probability. Now, what we'll do, we will assign this entire three-dimensional area where electron is found with maximum probability. So I'll mark it now with a marker. This entire area is the place of electron. Okay, is the place of electron. Where electron is found. Okay, so it is a three-dimensional region completely around the nucleus where electron is found with maximum probability. This is nucleus. Okay, right. We shall take out this green outside if possible. No, it's not remaining. It's not working. Oh, this is bad. Okay. So now that is the thing. Okay. So electron, we can only assign three-dimensional region around the nucleus where electron can be found with maximum probability. Beyond this three-dimensional region, there is very bleak chances that electron could be determined or found out outside this three-dimensional region. But nearby there may be very bleak chances, but not far off. Okay, so if you find out the three-dimensional region where electron can be found with maximum probability, the three-dimensional region around nucleus where electron is found with maximum probability is called an orbital. So the concept of orbital therefore has been introduced. Orbital for electron. Okay, electron is simply not there in a particular path, that is orbit. Orbit is two-dimensional path, but instead electron is found in three-dimensional region in space around nucleus, where electron could be there in that with maximum probability. The three-dimensional region is what is orbital. Is that okay? So in one sentence, if I have to differentiate between orbit and orbital, I can say orbit is the road of electron, the path of electron, and orbital is home of electron. Okay, in that in your home you can be found anywhere. Okay, so whereas path, it is just used for traveling. But anyhow, the concept of orbit is no more existing when orbital concept has been introduced. Is that okay? So this is how the concept of orbital came into picture. Orbit is two-dimensional concept of Bohr. Orbital is three-dimensional around the nucleus, and it is a consequence of the modern concepts such as de Broglie matter wave and Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Is that okay? So now we only think about orbitals. That's what you have: s orbital, p orbital, d orbital, f orbital, which are found in respective subshells. Is that okay? So let us take up now different types of orbitals and their structures. Okay. Should I scroll down, up, or shall I proceed? If you're done with it.
Proceed, sir.
Oh, that's fine. So this is the concept of orbital. Now we'll take up different types of orbitals possible. Okay. Right. I'll just give the definition. What is orbital? Three-dimensional the region in space around nucleus, region in space around nucleus, where electron can be found, where electron can be found with maximum probability. Electron can be found with maximum probability is called the orbital. That's the definition. Is that okay? Right. We shall proceed. We'll take up different types of orbitals. We have these orbitals which we are familiar now. Okay, so you have this s orbital. There is only one type of s orbital, and symbolically we represent with a single box. There is p orbital. There are three types of p orbitals. That's why all the three we represent in a block containing three orbitals. Similarly, d orbitals, there are 5 d orbitals. That's why symbolically when we write d orbitals, 5 d orbitals in a block. So will be written like this. Similarly, f orbitals, there are 7 f orbitals. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 f orbitals in a block we represent like this. And only these orbitals are significant. Okay, some of you would have been part of my quantum number explanation. Other than SPDF also there can be orbitals like G, H and all, but in none of the known elements electrons are found present up to G, H orbitals and all. They are just present up to F orbitals. That's why SPDF are more significant. It doesn't mean that remaining are not there. Could be there, but empty. Okay. So this is the thing. SPDF orbitals will take up the shape. Okay. There is one S orbital, 3 P orbitals, 5 D orbitals, and 7 F orbitals, and the shape of the orbitals. Shape of orbitals. We'll take one by one. First one. S orbital. It is spherical. The shape of S orbital is spherical. So if you want to represent this, you can draw X, Y, Z axis. It is very difficult here for me. I'm using this electronic tab now. The tab little slips out, unlike the board where the surface will be little rough. I'll try to write with maximum precision. That's it. Okay. This is a Z. Okay. I'll show with the dotted line. Okay. If nucleus is there at the center. Okay. So this is Y. Z. X. Now the orbital, S orbital, is spherically surrounding the nucleus like this. Okay. It will surround spherically like this. Okay. So this is S orbital shape form. So what do we mean by saying S orbital is spherical? Orbital is three-dimensional region in space around the nucleus. So if that three-dimensional region in space around the nucleus which contain electron is spherical around the nucleus, then it is S orbital. Like, okay. So we'll take up P now. The shape is dumbbell. I told you there are 3 P orbitals. So Px, Py, and Pz. So the 3 orbitals can be written like this. Sorry. This is Y, X. Somewhere like, okay, sir. Now, Px means the dumbbell shape, that dumbbell lobes are along X axis. Like this. So this is Px point. So dumbbell lobes are along X axis. If the dumbbell lobes are along Y axis, then it becomes Py, that's all. Okay. What I'll do is, if it's possible to cut this. Okay, it's good, no? Now I'll just write Py. Py, the lobes are along y-axis. Where is the nucleus? Nucleus will be there at the center, origin. Is it okay? So now, what do you mean by p orbital is dumbbell in shape? P orbital dumbbell means the three-dimensional region in space where electron is found around the nucleus is dumbbell. That's the meaning. The three-dimensional region is dumbbell. Okay, right. Now, what is PZ? PZ means the dumbbell lobes are along z-axis. Okay. This is PZ for. That's all. Okay. Nucleus is being present at the center. So this is the shape of p orbital. Like that, we'll take up D. The shape of d orbital is double dumbbell. Shape of d orbital is double dumbbell like that. Okay, right. So there are 5 d orbitals I told you. Okay. Let me give symbols for them. First one is called dxy. Next is dyz, dxz, dx square y square, dz square. So these are the 5 d orbitals. They all have double dumbbell shape except dz square. Dz square slightly different structure. Okay, we'll take up this. Okay. Right. I'll just draw this double dumbbell shape before that. Okay, it's better, right? Fine. We'll just name it. This is y, x, z. Now, how does exactly the shape look like? Now, dxy. First, we'll draw dxy. Dxy means the double dumbbell lobes. Totally 4 lobes are there of d subshell, d orbital will be oriented in between the x and y. Okay, in between x and y. So I can simply draw like this. Like this. Okay. It in two dimension it appears as if the lobes are along z axis. No, it is between x and y. Okay, this is dx. So if the double dumbbell lobes are there between x and y axis, it is dxy. Similarly, dyz, I think you can only say now, dyz will have lobes in between y and z axis. So this is y, z, and x. Again, in two dimension, you can at least draw one lobe to be along y and z axis. Okay, so this is yz, dxy, yz. See, this is y. Let me draw it. Correct? This is between y and z. It is horizontal plane. So now I'll draw one more perpendicular to this. Now it has to be along y and z only. Okay. So this can be d yz, and one more can be xz, y, z, and x. One lobe I would write between x and z. This is x and z. Another has to be perpendicular to this. It appears as if it is there between x, y and x, but it is not so. It is between x and z. This is the dxz, like this. So these three orbitals have lobes oriented between axes. However, dx square y square has lobes. Dx square y square have lobes along the axis, not in between. It's along the axis like this. Okay, this is dx square y square. And dz square, as I told you, it's slightly different. It has one lobe along z axis. Okay, one lobe along z axis like this. Okay, and a concentric circle along xy plane like this. A concentric circle along xy plane like this. This is dz square. So these are the 5d orbitals for it, right? So if you would like to write, you can copy down. Otherwise, I'll proceed. F orbital is highly complex. We will not be able to write the structures. We simply say F orbital. There are 7 F orbitals, but the structure is complex. Are you copying down? Should I proceed or wait?
Sir, you can proceed, sir.
Yes. So these are 5d orbital and 3 p orbitals and 1 s orbital. So pxy, pxpy, pz, the lobes are along the axis. S orbital spherical. Okay, it is spherically symmetrical along x, y, z. And double dumbbell d orbital, dxy, yz, xz have lobes in between the axis, respective axis. Whereas dx square, y square, dz square have lobes along the axis. So these are it. And finally, I'll say f orbital. The structure is complex. Okay, there are 7 f orbitals. That's all. So these are the shapes of s orbital, p orbital, and d. So fine, we'll take up further. With those concept of orbital is a consequence of modern theories, Heisenberg uncertainty principle, and de Broglie matter. So orbital is three-dimensional region in space where electron resides. Whereas orbit is concept of Bohr, of course it has been abandoned. But what is the meaning of that? Orbit is, or energy level is two-dimensional path where electron revolves around the nucleus. Okay. So also if you want to differentiate there, orbital can contain only 2 electrons in it. Later you will come to know. Whereas orbit can accommodate 2n square number of electrons, 2n square. Okay. So I'll just give all those things little later. One second. We'll take it first. It sometimes becomes non-responsive. This app is good, but sometimes it becomes non-responsive. Okay. Now we'll take up next concept, that is quantum numbers. I don't know, it has become non-responsive. Once again, please. I don't know what is happening. I'll just relaunch that app once again. Yes. So next concept we are going to take up is quantum numbers. Now, I think you were all part of quantum numbers before, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
How many of you were not there in quantum numbers?
Sir, me, sir.
Me,
Varsha.
sir.
Can anybody give me the names that I was not there in quantum numbers or something like that? Huh?
Me,
Sir,
Ruchi.
for full B group, quantum numbers is not over.
Pardon me once again, little louder.
Sir, for B group, quantum numbers is not over yet.
Sir, it's over, sir, for B group.
No. What has been done now? B group is separated later. Before that, you were all attending one section itself, right? I'll brief up, not a problem. And Okay. Dhanushri has been done or not? Has been part of quantum numbers or not? Okay, not done. Not a problem. I'll do it. Okay. So we'll take up quantum numbers. For others, those who are part of it, will become a revision. What are quantum numbers? We know by now in an atom there is nucleus, there are different energy levels, like that. Now, where is the electron inside the atom? We know just now concluded. Electron is there inside the orbital. Electrons are found inside the orbital. Now, where is orbital? Okay, I would write here. Electron is there in an orbital. And this orbital belongs to a subshell. And subshell is there in a shell or orbit or energy level. So shells are there around nucleus. Okay, so electron is there in orbital, orbitals are there in subshell. When I say subshell, as a whole, it should be S, P, D, F like that. These are. In S orbital, there is S subshell, there is one orbital. In P subshell, there are three orbitals like that. Okay, right. Shells are indicated by KLM, right? No, KLMN capitals, etc. So that's the thing. Now, overall picture, if I represent in an atom, so this is n is equal to 1, n is equal to 2, n is equal to 3. It goes like that. Let me go for 4th also. Okay, or one more, 5. 5 is required for me. Sorry for the poor diagram. Okay, n is equal to 3, n is equal to 4, n is equal to 5. Okay, now electrons are there in these shells, but inside the shell there is subshell. Like for example, if I can represent here. Now in the first energy level, n is equal to 1, there is S subshell. Here S and P. S, P, D like that. Similarly, S, P, D and F also. Here in the fifth energy level, S, P, D, F, and there will be one more called G. Okay, there will be one more called G. Okay. Okay, no problem. I am doing it in detail, not to worry. Okay, so I am going completely in detail for quantum numbers because some of you are not there. No problem. Okay. Now it is very clear for us. In an atom, electrons are there in orbitals. Orbitals are there in subshells. Subshells are there in shells. Shells are there around nucleus. Correct? Now, n is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. These are all shells. Inside shells, there are subshells. SP, SPD, SP, something like that. So, in the first energy level, there is only one subshell, S. In the second, there are two subshells. In the third, three. Which are those? SPD like that. So, if you can see this, as we move away from the nucleus, with every new shell, one subshell will be added. Correct? No? Which is the subshell that is added in the second shell? Can you tell me now?
P.
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 Which is the subshell that is added in the third?
D.
And F subshell adds in which shell?
4. 4.
D subshell could be there in which shell?
5.
5.
Like that in sixth shell, how many subshells can be possible? 6. In fifth shell, how many subshells are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. 5.
Fifth shell, how many subshells can be there?
6.
In
6.
10th shell, how many subshells can be there? 10.
And 10.
But electrons are found only up to S, P, D and F subshells. Okay, in all the known elements, 118 elements are there so far. So In all the 118 elements, electrons are found up to F subshells. That's why G, H, I, J, all those become insignificant for us. Now, in an atom, electron is there in an orbital, orbital belong to subshell, subshell belong to shell, that's all fine. If you want to identify one particular electron in an atom, then you need all these information. Which shell that electron belongs, which subshell that electron belongs, and which orbital of the subshell the electron is present. So, this information of electron is given by quantum numbers. Okay, there are 4 numbers by using which you can get the information of an electron with respect to shell, subshell, orbital, and everything. So those 4 numbers which give information about electron, by using which you can always identify an electron in an atom, those 4 numbers are called quantum numbers. Okay, so quantum numbers are used to describe electron. Quantum numbers are used to describe electron in an atom with respect to its position, shape of the orbital, momentum, and spin. That's what the definition of it. Okay, so quantum numbers are simply numbers. Okay, the set of 4 numbers. The set of 4 numbers which are used to describe electron. Electron with respect to its position, shape of the orbital, momentum, and the spin. Okay, so these are quantum numbers basically. Okay, that means by using these 4 quantum numbers you can identify an electron. That's why we say quantum numbers are like addresses of electron in an atom. In an atom there can be hundreds of electrons. By using these quantum number you can identify a particular electron, means they can be considered as addresses of electron. Like for example, if you want to be located, we need your address. Okay, house number, road, cross, and the area, at least in Bangalore. Okay, so we'll come to area and main road, cross, and house number. You are inside, like that. So by using these 4 numbers, you can identify, detect electron because these 4 quantum numbers give some valuable information about an electron. If you can identify electron in an atom, you can also differentiate one electron with the other. There can be 100 electrons in an atom. Every electron will have set of 4 quantum numbers. That's the meaning. So now we'll take one by one. Okay, it is easy, not to worry. First one, principal quantum number. Principal quantum number n. Okay, so what is principal quantum number? It basically, okay, it indicates the shell of an electron or energy level of an electron. So principal quantum number indicates shell of electron. Okay, n value can start with 1, and what is the maximum value of n? Could be, it can take up to infinity. That means for an atom, there can be infinite number of energy levels around the nucleus. Okay, but electron need not be there, that's all. And in all the known elements, 118 elements, electrons are found up to which shell maximum? Can you? In all the known elements, electrons are found up to which shell, which energy level? 10th, 5th, 1st, or what is that? Anybody?
Sir, infinity, sir.
No. In ground state, I am saying infinite number of energy levels are possible, but in all the infinite energy levels, electrons are not there. In all the known elements, 118 elements are there.
So
Electrons are
7.
distributed up to which shell?
So is it 7?
Pardon me?
Is it 7, sir?
Exactly. Seven periods. You know periodic table? 7
Yes,
periods
sir.
are there. Elements in a particular period will have same number of shells. All the elements of 6th period will have 6 shells. All the elements of 3rd period will have 3 shells. All the elements of 7th period will have 7 shells. Maximum 7, that's all. Okay. That means in the ground state, electrons are present, distributed in various atoms up to 7 shells. Like hydrogen has electron in first shell. Like zinc will have electron up to 4th shell. Like that, in all the elements up to 118, electrons are found up to 7 shell. That's it. Okay. Now, n cannot be equal to 0 because there cannot be an atom without shell. So, nucleus and energy levels are common. So, n starts with 1 and goes up to infinity. So, n value also indicates relative size of the atoms. Okay. So if you consider final maximum value of n for an atom, you can compare the size also. Okay. So that's all about principal quantum number. It indicates shell of electron. In first stage, in describing the electron in an atom is detecting the shell. Correct? No? Where is exactly electron? Which shell? First stage. And then we'll go to subshell. Correct? No? Now we found out. I am looking for an electron in an atom. First, I should know to which shell it belongs. After knowing the shell of that electron, what is next stage of me? What should I do now? I'll go to subshell. Which subshell does that electron belong? After knowing the subshell, I'll go to orbital. After knowing the orbital, I'll see what it is doing inside the orbital. That is spin, we say. Okay. So there are totally 4 quantum numbers actually. So I told you, this 4 quantum numbers. I should have written one sentence here. I just write it. So there are 4 quantum numbers. First one is principal quantum number, indicates shell. Next bit. Azimuthal quantum. Azimuthal quantum number, L, symbol is L here. And it is also called by some other name. It is called subsidiary quantum number, or angular momentum quantum number, like that. Okay. Or orbital quantum number. These are all the different names for this azimuthal. Now, what does it indicate? We came up to shell of electron. What is our next stage? Find out subshell. Now, azimuthal quantum number indicates subshell of electron. Indicates subshell of electron. Now, which are the subshells? I told you S, P, D, F are the subshells. Okay. So now you should know the value of L and different subshells. Okay. So the value of L and respective subshells. Subshells are as given. You can see here L and subshell. Okay. L value starts with 0 actually. 0 also can be a value for L. 1, 2, 3. Let's go up to 4. Okay. When L is equal to 0, it indicates S subshell. 1, P subshell. 2, D subshell. 3, F subshell. Then what should be 4?
G.
Exactly. G subshell. Can be L can be 5 also H subshell, but they all are empty in any of the atom. That's why we don't generally encounter, okay, or discuss about them. Right. SPDF. Just hold like this. 5 orbitals. Start with 0. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. S, P, D, F, G. Okay. Right. Now, subshells are there in a shell. How many subshells are there possible in a shell will be decided by the shell number. If n is equal to 1, first energy level, it is very small. It is near the nucleus, small. It has only one subshell. In the second energy level, there are 2 subshells. Third energy, there are 3 subshells. Like that. The subshell, that is L value, depends on shell value, that is n value. Okay. I would say one sentence. The value of L means subshell, depends on the value of n, sorry, depends on the value of n. So the value of L subshell depends on the value of n, that is shell. How exactly it depends? For a very n value, L can have values from 0 ending with n minus 1. From 0 to n minus 1. Okay. For a very value of n, L can have values starting with 0 and ending with n minus 1. What do you mean by that? Let us take examples and understand. Okay. Now let's say n value, okay, L value, and subshells possible. We'll make a table. Okay. When n cannot have 0, right? N is equal to 1. When I say n is equal to 1, this is the nucleus. Okay. So when I say n is equal to 1, it is the first energy level. Okay. N is equal to 1 in an atom. In n is equal to 1, there can be subshells. We know already. Let us understand through this mathematical relation. When n is equal to 1, L can have how many values? 0 to n minus 1. Which is the first value of L now when n is equal to 1? 0.
0.
And ends with what? N minus 1. What is n value here? 1. 1 minus 1 is 0.
0.
That means when n is equal to 1, L can have value 0. When L is equal to 0, which is the subshell?
S.
S subshell. What do you mean by that? When n is equal to 1, L can be 0, meaning in the first energy level, there can be S subshell. That's all. You can see when n is equal to 1, it is first shell. In the first shell, there can be only one subshell. And which is that subshell? S subshell. So in the first energy level, there is only one subshell, that is S. There is no P, there is no D, there is no. It is not allowed by quantum levels. Done? We'll go to the next, second energy level. When you say take second energy level, how many, which are the values of L possible? Can you tell me?
0, 1.
0, 1.
Correct, no?
Yeah.
So L value starts with 0, goes up to n minus 1. So which are the possible values? 0, Next is 1. Next 2 minus 1 is 1. It stops there. That's the meaning. So when n is equal to 2, meaning it is second shell, n is equal to 2. Now which are the possible values of L? 0 and 1. When I say L is equal to 0, which is the subshell? Yes.
Yes.
Which is the subshell when L is equal to 1?
P.
What does it mean? In second shell, there is S and P subshells. That's why while writing electronic configuration, we would write 1S, after that 2S, after that 2P, after that we don't write 2D. Why? You take up this now. When n is equal to 3, what is n is equal to 3? Third shell. Let me draw the third shell here. This is a bad diagram. When n is equal to 3. Okay. Now, which are the possible subshells there? Can you tell me now?
0, 1, 2.
0, 1, 2.
0,
So
1.
it should be 0, 1, 2. Is 3 possible?
No, sir.
No, because
No,
n
sir.
value is 3 here. Maximum value of L can be 3 minus 1, 2. So let me draw. Which are the possible subshells now? L, in the third shell, subshells are S,
S,
P,
P, D,
and D.
D.
And that's what we write here. So this is third shell, S, P, D. While writing electronic configuration, 1S, 2S, 2P. After that, what we would do? We write 3S, 3P, and 3D is there. But of course, Aufbau principle says 4S and then 3D. All those things. Is that okay? Next, we'll write one more. When n is equal to 4. What do you mean by n is equal to 4? We are speaking about fourth shell. Correct? This is n is equal to 4. Okay. When n is equal to 4, which are the values possible for L? 0.
0, 1, 2, 3.
0,
4 is possible?
1,
No.
2.
No, sir.
When n is equal to 4, 4 minus 1 up to 3 it is possible. So therefore, which are the subshells in fourth shell?
S, B, D, F.
PD.
D and F. Can you tell me which is this new subshell added in fourth shell?
F.
Yeah. Okay. So I can say S, P, D, and F. So F is there present from fourth shell onwards. There is no 3F. Likewise, there is no 2D. Likewise, there is no 1P. Because from the first shell, S is present. From the second shell, P will be introduced. From the third shell, D. From the fourth shell, F. Can you tell me which orbital, which subshell will be introduced from the fifth shell?
G.
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 G. Let me write that and finish. Okay. So in the fifth shell, which are the possible values of L? 0,
0, 1,
1, 2, 3.
4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
4. Correct?
S, P, D, F, G, sir.
Now, when you took up the L values, it gone up to 4, meaning S, P, D, F, G. G subshell will be introduced in fifth energy level. Okay. This is n is equal to 5, and the subshells are S, P, D, F, G. So, answer my question. What is the L value for G?
4.
4.
Now answer. If G subshell has to be present in an atom, what is the minimum value of N?
5.
5.
Correct, no? When N is equal to 4, which is the subshell added?
F.
D.
F.
F.
The second shell, which is the new subshell added?
P.
P.
From the first shell itself, which is the subshell present?
S.
P.
Okay. Now I think we have understood. Now, how many subshells are there in fifth shell?
4. 5.
Yes.
5.
Because L value starts with 0 and therefore ends with n minus 1. So in fifth shell, there are 5 subshells. In fourth shell, how many subshells are there?
4.
4.
Four.
In the first shell, how many?
1.
1.
There can be how many subshells in 10th shell?
10.
10.
Right.
One.
So can I say one more sentence now? For every
Yes.
value of n, for every n value, L can have values from 0 to n minus 1. And I can also say L can have
10.
same number of value as n. Can I say this? Can I say this statement? L can have same number of values as n. When n is equal to 5, how many values are possible for L? 5.
5.
When n is
5.
equal to 3, L can have 3.
3.
So
3.
L can have same number of values as n, but starts with 0, ends with n minus 1. Okay. Now, in our journey of understanding quantum numbers, we are detecting electron or identifying electron in an atom. In that process, first we have found out shell of electron. After that, we have gone to next stage. We have detected subshell of electron. What is our next step?
Orbit.
Find out orbital, and then peep inside the orbital and see what is electron doing. Okay.
Electron orbitals and axis.
I didn't get you. What?
Sir, the fourth one is about the axis and revolution. So that's what I was
That
trying
is
to tell.
spin motion. Exactly. Okay. Spin is. Now remaining 2 quantum numbers we'll take up in the next class. It's already 8:03. You have one more class also. Half an hour break is there. Today 3 classes. So all the best. So we have done a principal quantum number, azimuthal quantum number. Next is magnetic, and the next is spin. We'll meet for the next class. Probably I would take one more class in this week, so that next week onwards syllabus will be common for both the batches. I need one more class, remaining 2 quantum numbers and rules governing electronic configuration. Till then, for them also we have done. So I'll just take one more class. I'll announce you in advance. Thank you. I'll meet for the next class. Bye.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Sir,
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
sir.
Okay, I'm going to end the meeting.